Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing by the Small Business Association of Michigan. I'm Brian Calley, CEO.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us from SBAM's new headquarters, one block south from our old headquarters. I'll let Brian fill you in on that in a minute. We do want to welcome one of our new members this week, Drew Shaw Fabricating out of Jackson. And we're welcoming them on behalf of our sponsor, Consumers Credit Union. Consumers Credit Union is celebrating small business with a gathering at their club, restaurant, and bar at Van Andel Arena next week, October 4th. So if you're interested in joining them, if you're in the Grand Rapids area, we'll drop a link here on Zoom and in Facebook so you can learn more. So Brian, I know we touched on the move last week, but why don't you give everybody a little update for us?
Yeah, we spent last week moving into our new headquarters, which is, as you had mentioned, just across the street, the next building to the south of where we were for the last 15 years. And great space. Actually, this building is owned by a small business owner, a member of SBAM's, and did a fantastic job of doing the build out, building it around how we operate these days. We have 33 team members here at SBAM, but in any given day, there might be 10, 12, 15 maybe that are in the office. And so having a different type of work setup where people could be coming and going all the time was really important. But I tell you, they did a fantastic job. And while we're still kind of moving in here in my office, I've got stuff set up. I've started to nestle, if you will, but there's a lot of details to be taken care of, but maybe on one of these briefings we'll do a walk around maybe to show you the new digs. Looks fantastic. Again, Chris Elliott, who owns the building, just did a fantastic job and also gave our members a great deal on our lease rate and covering build out costs, and really excited to show it to people.
Absolutely. I love the idea of a walk around to kind of showcase all the great features. So, all right. So since we spoke on Thursday, there has been maybe a little bit of action on the UAW strike. Fill us in.
Yeah, a couple things that have happened. I mentioned on Thursday that the details weren't out yet, but that there was the Canadian Auto Workers reached a tentative agreement with General Motors, and that agreement was the details of which have since been disclosed. And while it did increase what would be considered to be pretty healthy or big wage increases, next to what has been asked for by the UAW across the Detroit River, was a lot higher. So it's just a new dynamic, another kind of factor in the process. Now, as of Friday, the union had set a strike deadline on Friday, saying they would expand the strike if meaningful progress wasn't made. They did expand the strike against General Motors and Stellantis, but not against Ford. And the reason that was cited that they didn't expand against Ford is because Ford had agreed to automatic cost of living adjustments. And that was a pretty big item. And so that represented good forward progress. So no expansion of strikes for Ford, but Stellantis and General Motors are now experiencing a strike at the spare parts distribution centers, and so that's the sort of thing that if that continues for a while here and people get through their inventories, you'll feel that in terms of having warranty repairs, for example. So just another factor that has been added into this ongoing strike, and the fact that the Canadian Auto Workers came to an agreement, and Ford seems to be kind of headed down a road. By the way, if memory serves, I'm not the authority on such things, but it seems like the last time that there was kind of an impasse, it was Ford that kind of moved first and the others followed along. So maybe it'll be a similar pattern that emerges here, but the automakers, I think, are nervous to find the right type of balance between settling the strike and this contract without creating an environment where they're uncompetitive against the other automakers that have made a lot of ground in recent decades against the Detroit Three.
And in related news, Michigan will receive visits from both Trump and Biden this week because both are courting the union vote.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting dynamic that has emerged here. We knew, and we've covered in the briefing previously, that Shawn Fain, the president of the UAW, the newly elected president of the UAW, had indicated that the language that Donald Trump was speaking and caution against the impacts of the electrification of automobiles and here in this country and around the world, that it comes with certain employment dangers for UAW members. And but the UAW president was also very careful to indicate that they're not aligned with Donald Trump politically, but they have not endorsed Joe Biden either. The UAW has been on the sidelines so far. So this Tuesday, Joe Biden will come, and it's being described as he will join the strikers on the picket lines. So normally a president would come and give a speech. The way that it's been described so far, joining on the picket line. So I'm not exactly sure what that would look like or what all that would entail and how long it would be for. But that's how that is described. And then on Wednesday, Donald Trump was kind of the presumptive nominee for the Republicans, and I suppose that could change, but it really looks unlikely. He will be visiting a business in Macomb County and meeting with about 500 current and former UAW members. They're apparently going to give a speech there, and I'm not exactly sure how they pick which 500, but these are either current or former UAW members, and not a lot of details have been released yet beyond that. But the fact that there are back-to-back visits from the presumptive nominees on either side of the aisle for the next presidential election, it's a good indication of how important and how many eyes around the nation are focused on this strike and the blue-collar workers that make up the membership of the UAW, which in the past has not been particularly dramatic in terms of support for who they support in general elections. But in 2016, Donald Trump took a lot more of that vote than anybody really expected. In 2020, didn't seem to be as much the case, and so it's an interesting dynamic, and it's playing out front row seat right here in Michigan.
All right, and as we're speaking of presidential politics here, do we have another update on the potential for Michigan's primary election date to be moved up?
There has been a back and forth on the primary election in Michigan and the idea of moving it up earlier. So the political parties, the national political parties, so the DNC and the RNC for the Democrats and the Republicans, they set the schedule on how early a state can hold a primary. So they, for example, are the ones that for a long time have said that New Hampshire and Iowa are the first two. And if you defy their rules, you lose delegate strength. Your state loses delegate strength at the convention when they officially pick the nominee. And on the national stage, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, they voted to move Michigan up early, but the RNC, the Republican National Committee, didn't. And so this put the Republicans in kind of a conundrum that we covered a couple of weeks ago. So the state party had to decide how to deal with that. Well, the state has 55 delegates that it could send to the national convention in August of 2024. still feels weird to me to say the year 2024. My brain has to like remember that it really that many years has passed since I grew up. But anyway, so 2024 August is when the convention is held. Michigan has 55 delegates. They would have lost that delegate strength if they just moved up the primary without approval, as Michigan law now says, to move it up into February. Well, they're going to go to a hybrid system, and apparently the Republican National Committee has signed off on this, so Michigan can keep its full delegate strength. There will be an early primary in February, the same time the Democrats do one, the Republicans will do one. A primary to pick who the nominee for president will be. But only 16 of the state's delegates will be awarded based on that primary election. The other 39 will be assigned later on in March, according to district caucus conventions. So we have congressional districts across the state. Each of those congressional districts, 13 of them, those congressional districts will each get 3 presidential delegates to hold a convention, and they'll decide who gets their 3. So you'll have a few of the delegates, 16, will be assigned according to the primary. The rest will wait and get assigned in a convention that is district by congressional district by congressional district. So it's kind of a complicated setup, but something that appears to at least keep Michigan's delegate strength at that convention. So as it stands today, it looks as though there will be an early primary. And when they hold that early primary, both the Republicans and the Democrats will maintain their full delegate strength when it comes to the formal selection of the nominees come August 2024.
All right, let's bring it back to state level politics now. The legislature is in action, and we've sent out a couple of calls to action in the last week. What are we concerned about?
Yeah, there's a kind of a new issue, and if you're part of our grassroots network, you received a call to action this morning asking you to reach out to your senator on a bill that would repeal what's called local preemption. And this is a law that says that things like minimum wage and leave requirements and all that should be statewide standards, not set by every individual jurisdiction. 1,800 local governments, and the idea of having a different minimum wage in every one of them. And by the way, the bill wouldn't allow a local jurisdiction to go lower than the state. They could only go higher. But anyway, you'd have a scenario where you have different employees subject to different rules, work rules, overtime rules, leave requirements, minimum wages, like all these different things. There'd be different rules depending on where those employees are working. So take, for example, in a hybrid work environment, you might have one set of rules if the person's in the office, another set of rules if somebody's in a different jurisdiction. So these are the sorts of things that our business owners would be faced with if this bill passed, and local governments were free to just set their local standards. It takes that fight that has been at the state level all these times and puts it in local city councils. And would definitely result in different rules in different jurisdictions across Michigan. That bill passed out of Senate, somewhat of a surprise, out of Senate committee last week, passed out of the Labor Committee in the Senate. So we've gone right to work on it and reaching out to other members of the legislature, asking you, and thank you for your response already since this morning, to reach out to let our legislators know how small business owners feel. There's a few other things that we're working on, trying to not give up any more ground this year in terms of the business environment. There's energy legislation that's being negotiated throughout the legislature, but especially in the Senate. And we had a previous last week, we had a call to action on this one, and we're just looking for the approach as they seek to to reduce overall carbon emissions, that they balance those goals with affordability and reliability of electricity, and to maintain access to natural gas as well. These are really important factors for well, all industries to some extent need energy, but some industries are heavily reliant and dependent on a competitive and reliable energy electricity grid and the cost per kilowatt hour. It's a really important important set of factors that is again in real time being negotiated at the Capitol. The final one I would cover today is the governor's proposal for a long-term family medical leave, paid leave benefit, 15 weeks, so about 4 months, and it would be one that would apply pretty broadly, essentially patterned after the federal Family Medical Leave Act, only requiring that it be paid leave instead of unpaid leave where your job is protected while you're out, and then expanding the reasons that you can qualify for this type of leave. This is another one that, given the labor shortage that we face and the type of results we got back in our survey, small business owners saying that this would be extremely detrimental to the health of their business moving forward, to have a one-size-fits-all 15-week paid leave mandate on all businesses, including a business with 1 or more employees. So there's no small business exemption, no recognition of the way that this would impact small businesses even bigger than or even more than their bigger counterparts. So those are 3 pieces of the legislation that we're watching particularly closely, and in hopes that we can get through the next month or so. And we expect, well, I guess it'd be about 6 weeks that we expect the legislature to be in session. If we can get through these next 6 weeks without any of these bills passing, we should be in pretty good shape until they come back next year. So that's what I have for the state legislative update. But I would invite you to visit our website, sbam.org, and you can look in our advocacy page. It gives a rundown of all the legislation that we're concerned about, but those just happen to be the 3 that seem most likely to advance this fall, and so we're zeroing in on them.
And another reminder to email us at sbam@sbam.org if you'd like to be included in our grassroots emails and receive our Watchdog newsletter that goes out on Tuesdays. So Brian, back to the federal level here, we're also in the midst of a looming government shutdown. What do we know so far with maybe 6 days to go?
Yeah, it does seem to be kind of there was the debt ceiling, that debate that we kind of went through several months ago, but it seems like a kind of a perpetual thing. Although this one does kind of look and feel a little bit different to me. This possibility of the government appropriations running out on October 1st, and the potential for some sort of a government shutdown. And this would be at the federal level, of course. There are a few things that make it look a little bit different. First is there have been many within Congress that have been focused on trying to find a way to at least reduce the rate at which the federal government is going into debt. The total debt of the federal government just topped $33 trillion for the first time. And so there's a wider array of people that are concerned than what we've seen in the past. It's been kind of written off sometimes in the past as not that big a deal. But it's gotten to a level where more and more people believe it's a big deal. Now, military appropriations are normally kind of exempted from this, but they've had a hard time getting an extension even for that. And now this won't affect entitlements. So Social Security, for example, Medicare, those will continue in even if there is a government shutdown. But I would still, if I were a betting person, I would still bet on some sort of an agreement being reached before the deadline on October 1st. They've gone down to the wire before, and then eventually at the last minute they strike some sort of an agreement. I would still generally expect that to happen. It's just that it does look, people look a little more dug in to me than I've seen in the past, and that's really my gut talking there, as opposed to any particular knowledge of what's happening. Just it's more rough and tumble. We're heading into a presidential election cycle. There's lots of positioning that's happening, and it just seems to be more concern and I would say genuine concern, whereas before these types of debates have been kind of written off as no big deal. Something is changing here, and probably that there might be some short-term consternation over the possibility of a shutdown, but there is some limit in terms of the country's credit. We don't really know what that is. Although I would say with inflation, maybe it's the best time to start thinking about paying debt back with inflated dollars. But it's nevertheless, we'll know by the end of this week, I think, how things if things are going to turn out or not. Otherwise, you'll see. Well, I guess Sunday would be the deadline, October 1st.
All right. Let's talk about AI. Like AI it's popping up everywhere. There's a lot of headlines about AI in general. The latest being with the Writers Guild of America strike negotiations.
Yeah, this was one I would not have expected to cover on the small business briefing. The Writers Guild, like running Hollywood scripts and stuff. Or I guess it's not Hollywood anymore. It's Netflix and Amazon Prime and all of those, Disney. They've been on strike for the writers have been on strike for 5 months, and they just reached a tentative deal, and there seems to be a lot of confidence that this deal will be consummated and the strike will be over. What caught my attention was the last thing that was negotiated to kind of break the log jam and get a deal, and it had to do with artificial intelligence. So you might be aware that there is a lawsuit right now by a lot of famous writers, people that write novels. Apparently, these AI systems like GPT, the developers took these novels and used them to train the AI to be conversational and to write things. And so some of those writers are suing, saying it was an unlawful or an unauthorized use of their works, and that will be used for somebody else's profit without due to the writers. Where this came to play in the Writers Guild strike was that the writers were looking for some assurance that their scripts would not be used to train AI systems to replace them. And it's just amazing how fast this technology is working. But imagine that if you had a system that was trained up on a particular writer and how a writer thinks and how a writer writes, you could give maybe a topic or a situation and say, write an 8-part drama set in this area and do it in the style of this writer, and the AI system would be able to do that. The idea that it's popping up in so many areas, I think, is a stark reminder that things are changing very quickly and will continue to change quickly. And if you're not at least thinking right now about how artificial intelligence might be deployed or utilized in your business, it might be time to think about that, because you get the sense that in this new world, that being a little bit behind can turn into a lot behind in a hurry. So just popped up in a place that was absolutely fascinating to me. You would not have expected that automation and computers would have been perceived as a threat for a creative profession like writing. And imagining ideas and turning them into stories and creating characters, and yet here we are.
I did include a link to the sample AI policy that our friends at the American Society of Employers have provided too. It's just for certain levels of our membership, but if that's you or if you want to upgrade to get access to that, I did share that in the chat as well. So that is all we have for today. Brian, you're headed to the Upper Peninsula tomorrow for a series of events. So we'll be back here Thursday. Brian, you're going to join us from, I'm not sure which lovely city in the UP, but from the UP. I hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, everybody. See you later on Thursday. And if you're in the UP, hopefully I'll run into you next week.